All right, welcome into the 305 guys here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at 5 Reasons Sports. I got Alex Donno. You can follow him at Alex Donno. We're sponsored here by our oh boy, by our friends over at Better. I feel sound like the Dolphins wheezing to the finish. Better Edge. Use the code 5RSN. Get $20 to play. You're gonna need it if you bet the Dolphins. They're getting 3 points against the Rams. Monday Night Football coming up. I'm sure that the football gods would like to have this one back. We know how the Dolphins perform on national television. Again, 3-point dogs against the Rams. Difference with Better Edge and the other sites is first thing legal in 47 states, but also there is no VIG, which means you're not giving away money to the house for nothing. You know, what is it? What was the line? Dire Straits line, money for nothing, chicks for free. Don't have to deal with that with Better Edge. I can't speak to the chicks. I can just speak to the money. And you can find the line that you want in their market. So check it out. Again, the Dolphins, you can see there. See on that market order, 2.5. They're getting 2.5. Another one, they're getting 3. It all changes, and you can find the changes there on Better Edge. So check it out. Again, betteredge.com. Use the code 5RSN. All right, Alex. Talk Dolphins today. They're 2-6. I hate that we end up in this place so many times where we start doing draft pick talk halfway through the season. But I'm looking at their schedule, and I keep hearing that, well, it's soft. And then I look at what they've already lost to, or games that were tight that shouldn't have been tight. And I don't know that it matters that it was soft. Let me just go through it with you. They're at the Rams. Okay, Monday night game. They're not winning that. They don't win they don't win national television games. Sunday, after that, they get the Raiders at home. Again, short week. So they got to fly back from Los Angeles, and they got a short week at home to prepare. Then they get the Patriots at home. If there's any winnable game on the schedule, you'd figure that would be it. Then they're at the Packers, team that's kind of in the mix in a challenging NFC right now. Again, they've had quarterback injury problems, that kind of stuff. Then they get the Jets, the hopeless Jets. By the way, that's my 2 good calls this year were the Steelers over and the Jets under. Those have both played out. Jets at the Dolphins December 8th. Then they go to the Texans December 15th. That game may have meaning for Houston. 49ers at home. They're not winning that one. December 22nd, 425 game. At the Browns. Again, the Browns have been a mess this year, but it's a Sunday night football game. Dolphins won't win it. Has that one been changed? By the way, they got to change that, right? They got to flex that out, I would think.
Yeah, you would think. I mean, Sunday night football is this hallowed ground of a lot of times the Sunday night games are better than the Monday night games because they have the flex capability. I mean, they'd have to be crazy not to flex that out of Sunday night.
You would think. And then they're at the Jets to finish. I'm sure that the turf there will grab a few. So look, on paper, I understand it. It's not great. But, I mean, let's look. I mean, this was a soft schedule year for them. I mean, they open with the Jaguars, who are not very good. Then they lose to the Bills, who are. Lose at Seattle, been a little up and down. Titans, not a great team. You lose by 19 to them at home. And I know the quarterback situation, but again, I'm not going to give them excuses for this because we talked about the quarterback situation before the year. Then they pull out a 5-point win in New England. That was hard to watch. They lose to the Colts, where they had Boyle in the game at the end, lose by 6, lose to the Cardinals essentially on the last series, lose to the Bills on the last play. They haven't. It's not like they played a bunch of juggernauts. I mean, they haven't, and they're 2-6. So why am I expected that they're? Why is anybody expecting they're going to go 6-3, 7-2, and they have to win 7 games to have a chance to make the playoffs? So what are we doing here?
Yeah, the margin for error from this point forward, no matter how easy the schedule looks, the margin for error when you're a 2-6 team is virtually 0. So I think, and Ethan, it would stand to reason that the Dolphins, their second half of the season coming up, it's a little bit more than a half now that you have 17 games, but it stands to reason that, assuming Tua stays healthy, your second half is going to be better than your first half. But are we just going to crawl to another one of those finishes where the Dolphins do okay enough to make the back 9 interesting, but not enough to get into the playoffs? And then, come January, once the season, your regular season ends, you're not in the playoffs, you start to look at what your draft position is going to be. Dolphin fans are again going to be in this spot where, all right, we went around 500, but we missed the playoffs. And now, instead of, a top 5 or 6 draft pick, we're at midway through the first round is where we're going to draft. Like, I feel like that's what we're trending towards right now. And, I'm really not a proponent of tanking. And I know that this group is not going to do that. Right. Like they're going to play to the best of their abilities. I guess the hope for Dolphin fans would be that if you're going to miss the playoffs anyway, you're going to end up losing more games despite how hard you play. Like this team is not going to tank. It's not going to happen. And I wouldn't root for that. I would actually prefer them to try and play their best to maybe give me some hope heading into next year. But I just wonder who's going to be in charge, Ethan. And I was actually very happy that the Dolphins didn't make any moves at the trade deadline on Tuesday.
I agree.
For a couple of reasons. Like I didn't want, Chris Greer to make some kind of a desperation move that's probably too little too late for a 2-6 team to try to win this year. And I also I didn't want him spending any assets because, I think the Dolphins, if you include the compensatory picks they're likely to get, are probably going to have 10 draft picks this coming season or this coming off season. So I don't want them, wasting any assets for players who may or may not be able to help you now. But then I do worry in a few months, who's the GM going to be to use all of those draft picks? Because we have an opportunity coming up in the offseason.
Yeah, it feels like they just punted on the deadline because they haven't chosen a direction yet. Like, and I'm okay with that. Like I said, better that they don't do anything else. No, it's not +1. It's it's +3, or we found +2.5 against the Rams. They're not beating the Rams. I just how many times have we watched this on? Not that the Rams are great. I mean, that division, everybody's 500 basically.
Yeah.
In the NFC South, but excuse me, not the South, the West. But like, what are we talking about here? Like, when is the last time they've won a primetime game? The Cowboys game, does that one count last year? Because it was Christmas Eve, wasn't it?
But it was in primetime, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess. But I'm talking about kind of the single solitary primetime game when they're like the spotlight attraction. They don't win them. Like they didn't win them back in the Gase years. Like I don't like doing the thing. Well, they didn't win something 10 years ago and it's a different team now. I get that, but I'm just so conditioned at this point. Like they're going to get rolled. I think because that's what they do in these kind of games. That's what this franchise does. I mean, have you seen this thing? By the way, I mean, as we sort of pivot back to the subject here, I give a guy credit for this. I gotta find his name. He literally did the research on everything that's happened since the Dolphins. This is James Kerr. Okay, so follow James E. Kerr. Okay, 2 R's at the end, sort of like Steve Kerr. I made this yesterday, and it really puts into perspective how long it's been. You ready? This is since the last playoff win. Bill Clinton was still president. Okay, here's what else is going. Here are the coaches. Wannstedt, who was coach at the time, but he had 3 more years after that. Jim Bates, remember him? He was that was the interim.
Of course. Yeah.
People wanted him to stay as head coach. Nick Saban, Cam Cameron, Tony Sperano, RIP, Todd Bowles, also interim, Joe Philbin, Dan Campbell, also interim, Adam Gase, Brian Flores, Mike McDaniel. Dolphin Stadium names since they last won a playoff game.
Oh, this is going to be a long one.
So it was Pro Player Stadium at the time, which had been Pro Player Park prior to that, which had been Joe Robbie Stadium. Since then, though, it's been Dolphins Stadium, Land Shark Stadium.
That was my favorite. Land Shark. That was my. I thought that sounded cool. Land Shark Stadium.
Fins to the left, fins to the right. May he rest in peace, Jimmy Buffett.
Yeah.
Back to Dolphin Stadium, Sun Life Stadium, New Miami Stadium. Was that for like a week? Like they were waiting for
I think that was while they were like waiting to secure what ultimately became the heart. It was like there was a grace period between the Sun Life expiration before they inked the deal with Hard Rock. They're like, we got to call the stadium something for, well, it was a matter of days or weeks. They had the temporary name.
Yes, and then Hard Rock Stadium since 16. Okay, here's the quarterback since Jay Fiedler won that playoff game.
Oh.
Jay for 3 more years.
Yeah.
Damon Huard was on the team at the time. Ray Lucas, Brian Greasy, AJ Feely, my guy Sage Rosenfels, Gus Farrat, Dante Culpepper, Joey Harrington, Cleo Lemon, Trent Green, John Beck, Chad Pennington, Chad Henne, Tyler Thigpen, Matt Moore, Ryan Tannehill, Jay Cutler, Brock Osweiler, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Josh Rosen gave up a second-round pick for him. Tua Tagovailoa, Jacoby Brissett, Teddy Bridgewater, Skylar Thompson, Tyler Huntley. All started games. Since they won a playoff game. You're telling me I'm supposed to believe this team's going to win a national television game? I don't care if they get Marino and Clayton and Duper, okay, JT and Zach back in their primes. They're not winning. They're not winning a game in prime time, and they're not winning 9 straight. Okay, they're not. I can't. 7-2 to me seems outlandish.
Yeah.
Again, I had them at 11-6 before the year, and I get it. Things have fallen apart, but they are 5-4. Maybe is that best case scenario. So what does that do for you? You're 7-10, Alex. Then what? Then what?
Yeah, then you draft in the middle of the first round. So, fans are going to be, disappointed with your draft position. You have to wonder if Greer is still Greer in charge. Is he going to get it right? I will say I'm happy that Chop Robinson is coming on a little bit the last couple of weeks. Got his first back this past. So hopefully that one works out because we've missed on a lot of defensive ends over the years, if you haven't noticed. So hopefully Chop Robinson thing works out. But yeah, I mean, if the Dolphins finish 7-10, it's like, yeah, I mean, listen, the fans are going to keep showing up to games on Sundays. They're going to be happy to watch some wins, but you're going to have a hollow feeling at the end of the year. And when you were going through all of those different coaches and quarterbacks, it took me back. And you feel, I feel so unfortunate as a Miami Dolphins fan, lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, because how, they could have, and obviously it didn't work out for a number of reasons, but greatest college football head coach of all time was here for 2 years, couldn't do anything. Like Miami couldn't. Nick Saban has won everywhere he's been except for the Dolphins with the NFL.
Right.
I remember how excited I was, and this was Saban who did this, but I remember how excited I was when the Dolphins signed Dante Culpepper. Like, I thought, this is going to be a franchise changer. I believed, because I didn't have any reason not to believe it, the incorrect information that, hey, Drew Brees' shoulder could be a long-term problem. Culpepper's knee will not be. So they obviously made the wrong choice there because, Brees became one of the greatest of all time in New Orleans, and, Culpepper just had nothing left down here. Like those to me, I look back over the years. I know there were other regrets that we have as Dolphin fans, but the fact that greatest college coach of all time couldn't do anything here. And, at the time you thought you were getting, your great franchise saver in Dante Culpepper translated to absolutely nothing here. And then, also I'll put it even in the last 2 seasons, this year and last year, you felt like the Dolphins were poised with this offense, with these weapons, with Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is one of the most exciting NFL players ever. I've been watching NFL football for almost 40 years. Tyreek Hill is one of the most exciting players I've ever seen. You've had him on your team now for, what is this, going on 3 full years, and you've really accomplished nothing. You haven't gotten a playoff win. He almost had 2,000 receiving yards last year, which is a lot of fun. Obviously Tua is still, he's got a lot of football, hopefully a lot of football left to play. But we really thought the last couple of years, hey, this team could really do something special, and we've got nothing to show for it.
Yeah, and just like Jason Taylor and Zach Thomas went into the Hall of Fame without having either of them reached a conference championship while with the Dolphins. All right, we're going to get to our sponsor in a second, but I'm just going to read this to you. Ready? Presidents since they last won a playoff game: Clinton, George W. Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, Trump. New companies: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Deaths: Ronald Reagan, Pope John Paul II, Saddam Hussein, Gerald Ford, Michael Jackson, Osama bin Laden, Margaret Thatcher, Nelson Mandela, Fidel Castro, Prince, George H.W. Bush, and Kobe Bryant. New tech and products. The Nintendo Wii came out 18 years ago. It's been longer than that, this drought. The iPod came out 1 year. 1 year. Not even 1 year. A few months. Credit to this guy for putting this thing together.
Yeah.
iPod came out a few months after the Dolphins last won their playoff game. The iPhone came out 7 years after the Dolphins won their last playoff game. Bitcoin, 2009. The iPad, 2010. We've had 3 major wars: Afghanistan, Iraq, and Ukraine. Okay, this is all of this stuff. COVID and back. All of this. This has been accomplished since the Dolphins last won a playoff game. And it ain't that hard look at the standings right now. Look at all the teams that are in the mix, and really the Dolphins are not. Anyway, we'll get to the other side of this. How do you actually execute drafting Minka over Lamar Jackson. I'm so well, and then not even making it work with Minka. That's the thing. He became a Pro Bowler somewhere else, right? Okay.
Yeah.
We will get to how they actually accomplish a soft tank if that's what they want to do. Before we do that, though, man, Dolphins need some leaks fixed. Maybe they should reach out to Water Cleanup. Water Cleanup of Florida, your one-stop water and mold cleanup shop. Check them out, WCUFL.com. More than 100 5-star reviews on Google. They're based in Boca Raton, service the entire Tri-County area. Again, Michael Robert and his team, they'll take good care of you. If they can't do the job, they will let you know. They'll work with you and your insurance company to make sure that you get what you deserve if something happens. But also, again, get in on the preventative maintenance. We know that we'll be swinging around to hurricane season again, flooding, all this stuff down in Florida. And so definitely check it out, WCUFL.com. If you've got the schmutz at Water Cleanup, they've got the guts. All right, how would you actually do? Players don't tank.
No,
they don't. They're playing for their jobs. They're playing for money. They're playing for their legacies. They don't tank. Coaches don't really tank unless they're told to. But front office,
even if they're told to, sometimes they don't, and then they sue you later.
Well, that can happen, and we saw in Houston what happened, right? This has happened in a number of different cities. But front offices and particularly ownership can tank. They can steer. The Dolphins did this. I mean, that's what's so crazy about this is that they did all this to put themselves in position to build something big. And it seems like they've squandered it. I mean, they took it down to the brass. They took it down to the foundation in 2019 and 2020, had these drafts to rebuild it, got some very good players, but it has not amounted to a playoff win, and it's not going to this year either. What would you do here? Do you sit Tua? Because I feel like if Tua, Tyreek, and Waddle, for as long as he stays healthy, which is I don't think it'll be very long, as long as those guys are playing, like they have a chance in these games. So what do you do if your goal is to just accumulate assets the rest of the year?
See, I don't think there's a lot you can do because there's no reason unless Tua does, God forbid, suffer another even if Tua even suffers like a minor injury, like he sprains his pinky finger or something, then yeah, that would give you an excuse to sit him for a while. But if he stays completely healthy, there's really no way you could spin sitting Tua because it's not like you have another quarterback. Like if this were like an older quarterback and you're grooming a young future starter, I don't believe Skylar Thompson is going to be that.
Right.
Then there's really no way you could spin sitting Tua unless you just want to scream, I'm tanking. And then obviously the optics of that, just something that Stephen Ross cannot afford to do. So, for better or for worse, you've got to keep playing Tua as long as he's healthy. But again, Ethan, these are situations where even if Tua suffers the type of minor injury that he probably could play through, that could give you a reason to probably sit him. But I really don't. I mean, is there anything you see that could be done here? Because I think that, listen, this team's not very good. So the problem, it might just take care of itself. Like even if they're trying to win, they may not win a lot more games, right? So I don't really think there's anything you can do because and let me say this, I'm a firm believer of I don't want to cheer for a team that is the type of organization that is going to purposely, even if they do it subtly, purposely sabotage their on-field product, because I think it's a culture wrecker, right? That and Mike McDaniel, I'm assuming he's going to be the coach next year. Now, if you do hire a new GM, maybe that GM's going to want to bring in his own guy, but I'm going to assume Mike McDaniel's job security is and probably should be better than Chris Greer's job security. You don't want to be creating the sort of culture where it's like, we're going to purposely play guys who aren't ready to play because we're kind of trying to lose, because then you really lose your locker room. And if you send any sort of vibes out there that we're not trying to field the best possible players to win, I think that can put you in an even worse position for next year. And I know a lot of fans feel differently about it. I obviously didn't play in the NFL, but I've talked to enough former players and current players over the years where they say like it's really a dangerous line you walk on if you set that sort of precedent. So I think this team is just going to keep playing their best possible guys, and we'll let fate take care of itself.
Yeah, and the sad thing about it is that the AFC is not what it was billed to be in any way, and there were opportunities for the Dolphins this year, but those opportunities are gone. And I love when we end up doing all these shows on all these, different platforms, and then it just comes down to a very simple statement, which you just made. They're not very good.
Yeah.
And we can spin this any way we want. And I know ultimately Heat fans are going to look at me and say, they may say the same thing about the Heat here pretty soon. But when you keep losing to better teams like the Heat are doing, even if you're close, ultimately you're really good if in the greater context of basketball players in the United States. But in this elite league at this time, you don't measure up. And the Dolphins, we know that already. I just think we know it. We've seen it. Backup quarterback is part of the team. This is not what happened this year is not anomalous. They did not prepare for the worst case scenario, which was in a lot of ways a likely scenario. They're sunk because of it. And at this stage, look, you're right. Guys are not going to tank on purpose, particularly in that sport. It is too dangerous. If you're not going 100%, you are liable to get yourself killed out there. But I do think that you have to, as much as you can play the young players late in the season and get them experience, you do that. I don't think leaning into, okay, we're going 150 miles an hour here. We're going to try to make the playoffs. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're just not good enough. And this comes in from Indeed. Play the season out. If they fail, they'll trade the players in the offseason, let them walk for comp picks. Whoever makes decisions needs to follow the philosophy built inside out. Got to make the trades that'll hurt in the short term. Zito did it with Hubes, meaning Huberdeau, and of course got Kachuk.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, you can make a case for just letting it play out and let guys walk. They obviously didn't make the trades. We thought, and I think we both agreed with that. They didn't do anything to add to the roster, give away picks. Steve Ross better be making a list of guys who can make the picks for them going forward, because this is just not. It's not great for us to be in the first or second week in November and saying, really, there ain't anything to talk about with this team at this point anymore. There's just not. And I would go hammer the Rams on better edge if I were all you guys. Anyway, Alex, appreciate it. We'll be back on Tuesday. Check out the latest episodes of 5 on the Floor, including the one we did last night. Pulse of Fins Nation was up earlier in the week. You can check that out because they covered a similar topic to us. Lewis did it a little bit differently with his crew. So check that out. Of course, subscribe to the channel and make sure to tell your friends to do the same. Thank you, Alex. I'll see you again on Tuesday.
See ya.